Today, I thought instead of doing the 22 through 25, like I was thinking yesterday, after a bit of discussing it and in depth, going into it with friends and family, I think I will camp out in 22 for just a little. Because I recognize that the whole sacrifice of Isaac thing is, at face value, a little odd. And, well, let's take it. 22. After all this, God tested Abraham. God said, "Abraham." "Yes," answered Abraham, "I'm listening." He said, "Take your dear son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains that I will point out to you." Abraham got up early in the morning and saddled his donkey. He took two of his young servants and his son Isaac. He had split wood for the burnt offering. He set out for the place God had directed him. On the third day, he looked up and saw the place in the distance. Abraham told his two servants, "Stay here with the donkey. The boy and I are going over there to worship. Then we'll come back to you." Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and gave it to Isaac, his son, to carry. He carried the flint and the knife. The two of them went off together. Isaac said to Abraham, his father, "Father?" "Yes, my son." "We have flint and wood, but where's the sheep for the burnt offering?" Abraham said, "Son, God will see to it that there's a sheep for the burnt offering." And they kept on walking together. They arrived at the place where God had directed him. Abraham built an altar. He laid out the wood. Then he tied up Isaac and laid him on the wood. Abraham reached out and took his knife to kill his son. Just then an angel of Yahweh called to him out of heaven, "Abraham, Abraham!" "Yes, I'm listening." "Don't lay a hand on that boy. Don't touch him. Now I know how fearlessly you fear God. And you didn't hesitate to place your son, your dear son, on the altar for me." Abraham looked up. He saw a ram caught by its horns in the thicket. Abraham took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. Abraham named the place Yahweh Yireh. Yahweh sees to it. That's where we get the saying, "On the mountain of Yahweh, he sees to it." The angel of Yahweh spoke from heaven a second time to Abraham, "I swear, Yahweh's sure word, because you have gone through all this and have not refused to give me your son, your dear, dear son, I'll bless you. Oh, how I'll bless you, and I'll make sure that your children flourish like stars in the sky, like sand on the beaches, and your descendants will defeat their enemies. All nations on earth will find themselves blessed through your descendants because you obeyed me." And Abraham went back to his young servants. They got things together and returned to Beersheba. Abraham settled down in Beersheba. After all this, Abraham got the news, "Your brother Nahor is a father. Milcah has given him children. Uz, his firstborn, his brother Buz, Kamel, he was the father of Aram, Kesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. Bethuel was the father of Rebekah. Milcah gave these 8 sons to Nahor, Abraham's brother. His concubine, Reumah, gave him 4 more children, Teba, Gaham, Tehash, and Mach. And I know that there are a lot of the jokes. It's like, I wonder how Isaac felt about that. And this entire thing, we don't necessarily know how old Isaac is at the time. We don't know if he's very old or very young. We know that he calls him a boy. At the same time, culture, how often do fathers call their sons boy, no matter how old the two of them are in relative relation? It strikes me, though, that the more beauty in this is the fact that it's very reflective of what happens with Jesus. That, on the third day they get to where they're meant to go, and an act of absolute faithfulness covers many. And it's beautiful to me that, at the very beginning, when Abraham gets told, "Go to the land of Moriah and sacrifice your son as a burnt offering," To Abraham, yes, that's got to be, those, at the same time, when you get past that initial reaction, which, understandable reaction, from Abraham's perspective, he had a son at 100 years old. God has been with him his entire life and has told him that all of his descendants will come from Isaac. So somehow, even in the sacrifice, there will still be a line of descendants. And I think that's honestly where we get to we call it Jehovah Jireh or Yahweh Jireh. And I don't, the more I dig into it, I don't think it just means God provides. It does, because God does provide, but I like the see to it more. Because it's deeper than that. It's not just provision, it's seeing to it. It's setting all things right. Abraham knew that somehow it would work out, just like Paul talks about in Romans. The reason I jumped to this thing to begin with. It's trusting that God has the power to make life from death, because he already did it the first time to make Isaac in the first place. He creates Isaac in the womb of Sarah, who's, again, really old. Like, they're both 100 years old ballpark. Sarah is past the age of being able to have children, and she was barren when she was. So he's already brought forth life from a dead womb. And Abraham believes that he will do it again, that God will see to it. So it is an act of absolute faith. He just knows God will do it because he's seen God move. It is looking back to see what God has done, to look forward, to know that he is promise keeper. And it strikes me as quite beautiful that he answers the same way Samuel does, of just, I'm listening. That it takes that listening, especially when you consider the fact that the Hebrew people are called the Shema, that we're all called the Shema. Worship the Lord your God with all of your strength, all of your soul, all of your might, or more accurately, your intention, the work of your hand, and your muchness, your whole being. And the word Shema means to listen and respond. So he listens and responds. He Shemas before they were ever given the Shema in Deuteronomy. And that's a beautiful thing to me. Because for it, he doesn't know how, he knows who. God will see to it. We trust him. And that is the beauty of a relationship. And for Isaac's perspective, he knows he's the child born of that age. He knows miracles are a thing. And I sometimes wonder if the reason we don't get a ton of Isaac's life in the Bible is because Isaac is that promise fulfilled kind of idea. Not perfect, just more in a deeper position to understand. Not a better, a deeper. And I really, adding the whole children thing, it does go into the genealogy, and I know that's why it's attached. But it strikes me as quite beautiful that an act of trust brings salvation. And in Christ Jesus, an act of trust brings salvation. The act of Jesus, the true faithful act, 3 days later, we see resurrection and a new life. Death, life. A sentence of death, go sacrifice your son. 3 days later, we see new life. The sheep provided for. The ram provided for. The sacrificed lamb provided for.